Being it's 5:05, we'll call the April 27th meeting of the Tilton Northfield Fire District Building Committee to order. Present is myself, Kevin Kate, Kevin Walgren, Ed Ozer, Chief Seatar, Tim Sattler, and Lisa Martin. I did not receive emailed minutes. Did anybody else?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was me that wasn't getting the email, that was him.
Maybe Beth got the two Kevins confused.
And Scott, you'll notice, isn't that this one, right?
No, I didn't see Scott didn't make it to that one.
I wasn't here anyhow, so. Before we go any further, I want to publicly apologize for not being able to be here at our last meeting, and give a specific apology to Kevin Walgren, who I neglected to inform that I was not going to be here in his role as vice chair. Certainly should have been notified. I apologize.
We got through it.
I understand. I watched the video. Lisa, thank you for taking the lead on the last meeting that we had. Seeing as though we have a quorum, do we have a motion to accept the minutes from the prior meeting?
I'll move to accept the minutes.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I was okay with them.
Tim?
Yep, that's fine.
Chief? Matt? Then, all in favor of accepting the minutes from the April 13th meeting as written, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting minutes are accepted. I understand there was some concern voiced at our last meeting regarding a purchasing policy for the fire district and whether we were in violation of that policy or not. Chief, thank you for sending out a copy of that policy so we all have it. I did receive a call from Commissioner Silly making me aware of that, and that the commissioners were going to discuss it at their next meeting as to whether they would be willing to waive the requirement that some believe we are in violation of. Having read the purchasing policy, and I read it prior to us getting this far, noted that in the policy it states, the chief, in consultation with the commissioners, may choose to use requests for proposals when the product or service being considered can be provided in more than one way by competitive vendors. Goes on to say requests for qualifications and experience, RFQ may be used to pre-qualify vendors who will be sent a request for proposal. So as I expressed to Commissioner Silly, I didn't believe that we were in violation in any way to plan on attending the Commissioners' meeting when this issue is addressed. I did want to ask where the concern came from.
Someone asked me somewhere along the line about to look at the requirement for public hearings and to ask our attorney about it, which I replied in that process. He related to me that as long as you're following your policy and the, I forget the RSA, which I cited in it, email, he says you shouldn't have any problems. So that's when I brought up the purchasing policy and sent it out to everybody and the commissioners. And explained what.
I believe I was the one that only asked, were we required to advertise? No,
Oh, that's right, too. I wasn't following what you were saying.
That's
You
all
said
I-
you should advertise.
I would, because I was asking the legalities, were we required, being public money, to advertise?
Yeah.
Not the RFQ issue, none of that. And I think, but then you brought up that the commissioners can waive any and all requirements. If it's in the best
Yeah,
interest, in the best interest of.
I thought my computer's still beating me up. Because I'd have bet a hot dog and a Coke that I printed that email, and I can't even find it in the email list now. But it's the responses from the commissioners.
Yeah, I have.
You sent
I have
them.
printed copies of them.
You sent them earlier today, and
Yes.
I swear, I read them. I bet I printed them.
I didn't print them, I kind of read them, and they want to discuss it at the next meeting. That's what I read.
That's what I read as
Briefly.
well.
When is their next meeting?
Next week,
The third, isn't it?
Tuesday, next Tuesday, I believe,
How often do they meet? Every other week?
once a month,
Once.
generally.
More frequently during budget season.
Yeah.
But that was what I took from those as well, Lisa, was that they just wanted to discuss it next week.
And emphasis on may does not say, if that said shall, it might be a bigger hiccup. But where it says may, the other side of may is may not.
The other thing I think we need to make it clear to the commissioners, if you decide that you have to go back out for advertising, re-requesting proposals, you will not have a bond vote next year. You won't have anything to present to the voters. And I think that would be
Why
doing,
is that?
because
The-
you're never,
the
the
calendar-
time, you
Not
won't
enough
give
time.
enough
Calendar,
time.
the window's closed.
Right, because once you start over, now you're asking for new proposals, you've got a timeline there, you're scheduling, you're adding another three months to the process, and you won't have a product to discuss at. So basically, I think it's a huge setback.
Not necessarily. You still may not have a product for the next district meeting. But starting from scratch gives us more time to have more public input for the next district meeting. Where right now, we were squeezing to try and get one in November before the holidays. Whereas if we have to start over again, then we can certainly talk more about it at district meeting if we ask the moderator if that's possible. And then we could get input at maybe one or two additional public meetings similar to what Tilton did with the police station. We can try and get some questions asked of the committee that we're not thinking about, and maybe be able to determine get some appropriate answers to those. Whereas right now, we may have one session, a public session in November, which may probably be poorly attended because it's getting near holiday season. May and may not be, and I'm not sure what type of product we're going to have for them at that point. And then, if they do have concerns that we have to adjust things, mind you, we're under a timeline budget-wise to get something ready for a bond hearing and the warrant articles and stuff like that. It's getting close. It's a tight squeeze. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's pretty tight.
I just think we've been kicking this can for a long time. I'd hate to miss an opportunity at next time. But
And if we have the opportunity, we should do everything in our power, if you will.
Now, there is
I mean-
one thing, and I'm just gonna throw this out there. The commissioners can decide to hire Bonnet, Page and Stone, because they've already started on the project. They were selected by a process that apparently was correct, and there is nothing that requires you to go back out for RFQ. If you can choose to use them, and you won't even go through, it actually saves time. You'd end up with a product for the next time.
That's correct.
Or we continue with this process if the
Well, I'd like to address,
commissioners.
part of your statement is that, because to me, what you said indicates that we've done something wrong, and we haven't.
No, I'm saying if the commissioners feel that they didn't follow the proper process. I've already said let's keep going. I'm not saying we've done anything. What we've done is not typical of a municipal type project. But I don't know that we've done anything wrong.
No, I don't remember that.
No. Either way, we have to go with what the commission decides. So if we have to start over again, we have to start over again. It will definitely delay. We won't be able to have a product available for 2023.
Was anyone here able to go to that meeting next week, the commissioners?
I'm going.
Yes, you are.
Where are they holding the meeting?
It's open town hall.
I'll be there. You have select.
Can't be two places at once yet. Working on
Figure it out, let me know.
it. I will.
6? Does it start at 6?
Starts at 5:30.
5:30.
Probably won't get to it till about 6 because it's under new business and just further down the agenda.
I'll try to.
Okay, the other thing that Commissioner Silly suggested that we not speak specifically about any one particular contractor that has responded to our, this process, given where we're at with not knowing what the commissioners will decide with regards to the advertising and request for request for proposals.
Why is that?
So it doesn't muddy the waters if they decide that we need to start over again and actually put out request for proposals or request for qualifications. Suggested that we not talk about solar. Doesn't mean that we can't discuss interview dates and times. And then we also need to discuss future meeting days, correct?
Yes.
Do we want to discuss the draft that I had, the letter, basically that would have gone to whoever would recommend
We should.
it? Solidify the words, but not who it's going to.
Yeah.
I got that, I think I sent where I got the format from, I sent the whole package. Anybody looked at it? I got it from ACDC.
Was there something other than this that you said?
Yep.
Yes.
It was in the same email. I did send an updated one because I realized afterwards that there was a math error in one of the formulas. for the
Yeah, that was the
spreadsheet.
spreadsheet, but
But the letter,
I saw one, and I didn't open it.
yeah, I sent two emails.
And then
The
I
first
saw one
one
that
had
said
3
update.
files.
So I opened that one and dumped the other one.
The other one had 2 of the 3 files, 2. One that I was replacing.
And the one only had this.
Essentially what I sent was, it was a whole RFQ process and it had sample forms to use. And all I did was give you all of the forms in a PDF, and then I gave you the form that I modified so that we can make it suit our project. And basically, it's sent to everybody that we're gonna interview, and you give them an interview time and date. The thing that I added, or I actually deleted some of the things in there because we didn't do it in our previous process. But I put in, at the interview, please be prepared to discuss the following. Your intent to meet the proposed schedule for the pre-bond vote services. We want to make sure that they've thought about their schedule. Your proposed schedule for pre-construction and construction services, I probably should say if there's a successful bond, right? And then your proposed design and construction fees based on a percent of construction cost. And the reason I'm doing it, we don't know the construction cost. We won't know the construction cost till we select a paid contract. But most of them, we'll do it as a percent of construction cost if we use, I thought I put it in, maybe I missed it. If we use the AIA form, no, it's back here on the contract process. If we use AIA 141, you can specify the cost of the work with the guaranteed maximum price. And I think that's the way that we would want to go. But I guess that's up to the commissioners and the committee's recommendation.
Can you say that again? I didn't quite understand you. I
One is
understood the part
behind the
about
other.
discussing the cost as a percentage of total.
Of total construction costs. So, for instance, they'll have, the design fees, they can sort of figure out, okay, there's 6% of the structure cost, or of the cost. Your construction manager's fee is based on their overhead from their office, and their project managers, and their superintendent. You can specify all of that based on a percent of construction costs, and that's how a lot of them do it. A lot of them, when you go out to bid, the bid form basically says, what's your percent for insurance, for bonds, your overhead, your markup, what's your profit, and they do it based on a percent of the actual cost. So when they have a construction cost where they've got their subs all bidding, they get that cost, then they mark it up a certain percent based on fee. Okay. So we can ask, in fact, one of the contractors did give us that. They gave us a
So
percent.
I thought that sounds familiar, the other way I read that was like that.
So what we have is we've been given apples and oranges to compare when it comes to cost. And this kind of gives you something to look at. It is not binding, it's not a bid, it's just we're asking them, what would your percent be if you were doing it based on?
Are they gonna give us, is the expectation that they would give us one number, so hypothetically 7% of total construction costs?
No, I broke it down to those categories in that letter. Because your design fee is not going to be the same percent as your markup for profit and overhead. Your general conditions are usually a little bit different. Your bonds and insurances, you're not going to mark it up 6% when it really only cost you maybe 1%.
But it's all gonna add up to one number.
One number. which is, I guess,
Well, not-
was the next part of my question. Why do we care what their insurance cost, their insurance percentages and their?
Because they're gonna mark it up. Do you want them to mark it up 6% or 1%?
No, but like Kevin said, it's gonna end up being one number, 1% at the end.
Well, it'll be one
It'll be
aggregate number
one.
based on
An average, yes,
other lines, could be marked up differently, is that where you're going?
yeah, there's an overhead and profit. There, when you get into the project, that's what's gonna happen. You're gonna get a bill for the concrete, and the contractor's gonna mark it up X%. It's not gonna be, I suppose you could have it be that, but it throws a monkey wrench into it if you're using 1%
Well,
for a certain cost.
I'm a simple guy. Let's say that the project is $10 million
Right,
and their percentage is 2%
okay.
of total cost.
Then you, okay, and we're saying then that's
So
all
that
we'll
means,
get.
we're gonna end up spending $10.2 million. Doesn't matter how they get there. Whether
The
it's,
problem is we're asking them to give us pricing before we know what the project's going to be.
Right, they can still give us a percent, I guess, because they know the range, right?
But although insurance probably costs more based on risk, and risk in a larger project is probably more than a smaller project, but is it all relative?
Yeah, I guess, I see what you're saying, we could ask for one,
I just ask them why we wanna know how much they're gonna mark it up for, how much of their cost is gonna be for insurance, how much is gonna be for all those different. Like, I don't know.
Is there an average?
they'll come up with
I
one,
don't like that word.
if we ask.
But I think if you went back to, as you were saying, one of them did give us all those percentages. Give us different numbers.
So I'm thinking would that mean they use those percentages, whether it's a $1 million project or a $40 million project?
No, I'll bet they gave it based on what they felt the project was worth.
Oh, I see.
You know,
So-
they estimated something and said, yeah, we'll give this percent. So I guess we could ask the same.
So if the project's, we've been kicking around the number $4 million, that's, we're gonna see one group of percentages, but if it's $40 million, then those percentages are gonna be different.
And some of these companies, some of the buildings they're working on, they're up in $150 million cost.
This is a pretty big project going on now.
I mean, or we just don't look at cost at all, which if we do, we need to be able to compare. Right now, I can't compare these when it comes to their cost proposals. Some of them include something, some say we exclude this, some, so I was just looking for some way to look at it, but it was never portrayed that cost was part of the, well, I don't know, was it? If some of them gave us cost, some did not.
No, it was
So,
not.
now that could be a follow-up, we could select, interview, and then ask for cost information from
Doesn't the
the
cost come
top
from the
selected.
design?
What's that?
Doesn't the cost come from the design? Until you have a design, you can't possibly do the one cost.
No, and that's why I was asking for percent.
But there's
Because
no-
you have a range, if you're building something that's in a range of, 5 to 6 million, then they would have an idea of cost based on percent.
And that makes sense.
And again, it's not really binding, it's not a contract, we're just kind of trying to get an idea. And can you compare
Well,
based on
budgetary,
that?
I mean-
I don't know. It's not a bid.
No, but with what the two of you said, we don't know what the cost of the building is gonna be until we go through the design process and have a contractor that can price it out. But we need to know whether, contractor A is at 10%, contractor B is at 35%. we don't want to necessarily rule out cost as being part of our decision-making process.
And that's sort of where I was going with the percent thing, because we can compare percent and say, okay, if we have a $10 million project, this person's going to charge us this is going to charge us this is going to charge us that. Maybe, I think maybe after talking to you, breaking it down specifically just muddies the water. We can just ask for a percent. One number. And it's not a dollar number, it's a percent.
Percentage of the maximum cost. Yes.
Yeah, of the
It's a
cost.
percentage of the cost.
Of the actual cost.
The warrant article or our contract ultimately will be a guaranteed maximum cost, but the project will hopefully be less than that. And their percentage would be based on what it actually costs, not what the warrant article or bond issue is. Because the bond ultimately is going to be less than the project, because we have money in the bank.
So maybe we just ask for
That's what we're going to do.
one number. That makes it easy. I mean, it's not really, it doesn't, it's not giving us a number for pre-bond vote services, or is it? Are we gonna, how, you know what I'm saying? It's not really giving us a cost.
So before we get to district meeting, there's going to be a cost to determine what the cost is going to be. So it's kind of like two phases. You have your design phase, where you come up with a number for your project, and then you bring that number to district meeting for approval. And then if it's approved, then you have cost after that.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we differentiate between those two things, because we have, the commissioners have given us that permission, if you will, to spend out of that $100,000 fund to go through that design process, to use those funds as, for that part of this process, which will get us to conceptual drawings and a cost of the project. That's what will get us to the annual meeting, and we'll have a number, whatever that number is. And if it's approved, then we move forward from there. But that's really when it kind of gets down and dirty, when we're looking at plans and going, okay, you know, the deputy chief's office is not going to be 10 by 20, it's going to be 12 by 15. That's where we have a number, $5 million, let's say, and we start making decisions on how we're going to meet that, how we're going to make this building only cost us $5 million, when the chief wants Brazilian hardwood floors in his office, and can we do that?
But it is important at this stage, when we're selecting the general contractor, that we know their percent. We could hire anybody to do us to the pre-bond vote, and then after, it's like, okay, now we're gonna charge you 25%.
Right.
I think it's important to look at the contractors and say, okay, what is your percent going to be during construction? Understanding, I mean, maybe, and then maybe we could ask them all to give us a lump sum fee to get us to bond vote. But you have to be able to do the same scope.
One of them sort of did.
They did, well, yes, some of them limited, one of them limited it, said this is all we're gonna bill you to get to that point.
Right. And one of them was, I think, over $100,000 to get to that.
But I think the scope's different. One of them's gonna do more work than the other, and so we're not looking at cost. That's why I said we're looking at apples and oranges.
Yeah.
One of them's not including, you know, certain parts of the engineering. The other's saying, we're gonna give you a concept, and then after that, we'll run. Do we need more than a concept? Probably not. I don't know how much engineering you really need. And that, some of them were including they were including engineering in there.
How much engineering work and, or say, beyond conceptual drawings was done for the
did some borings, to find out what the soil was like. They did, engineering costs for bringing the main with the water line in. And there was also a railroad crossing that they had to, engineer as well. So I don't remember the number that they had, that was used in engineering, but it was engineering involved. I don't recall that it was a large number. It was, I think, somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000, which is still a lot of money, but based on the overall project cost of around $7 million, it's a small percentage.
We've done borings.
Over on this side, yes. And survey, right?
Yes.
Survey, borings.
And
I don't know if anybody's looked at utilities, but water's
water's there,
there.
natural gas is on site.
Electricity.
Electricity's there, fiber is there now, pulling that in for the cell tower, so we'll wrap it at the same time. But the soil conditions are worse than they thought. The foundation expense for that tower went from about $120,000 to $320,000.
You need it back out?
No,
So they're over towards the wetlands, right?
The
So expected.
Tilton School project was similar. They engineered the property, the land, the
yeah,
boundaries.
there was a
those
wetlands crossing we had to do there, and
material to be removed so that the building would fit on the site.
And that was all done before the bond vote?
yeah.
Right, and then they came up with the conceptual, and then, they got quotes so that they could give sort of an estimate of what they thought it would cost, and the idea being that you bring it before to get it approved, and then put it up to bid. But we hired Warren Street.
Yes.
That's true, I know that name.
Yeah, we hired Warren Street, and they did all that work prior, and it was probably another $100,000 project.
I know that the bond vote was like $4.8 million for that project, which $1 million of that project was site work. But how cheap it is now.
And that was how long ago?
2016, I think. Maybe 2016. It had a majority vote, it didn't have the amount needed.
Two-thirds.
Two-thirds, so it's a majority of it. Wish it had passed that, over the beginning.
So our approach is different than those two.
Well, you had hired the engineer. It wasn't a general, it
No.
wasn't a design build,
No.
right? So you're doing design, bid, build, which is a different process than what we're trying to do. Now, if you're gonna end up having to go back to the drawing board and we're gonna lose a year, you could consider going back to that as well. But I have no problem with design, build. I think it's a process that works just as well.
It does.
So, we're not gonna go over these.
I guess not. But want to keep going with this in case they
Yes.
decide that we're going. So I'm going to get rid of all of this thing and we're going to just say, give us your proposed design and construction fees based on a percentage of construction cost.
And are we gonna ask for a cost to get us to a bond vote?
Well, that's the
That would be
next
separate.
thing. Should we ask for a lump sum fee to get us to bond vote? The thing is
And what
we're
does
not the
that
ones
include? We
defining
should have a list of what it should
What-
include too.
We need to, if we're gonna do that, we need to define
What
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 that is.
that is.
But isn't that design?
That is design.
That's part of the
So
design
you don't,
process.
so we don't wanna say, give us a percentage of design and construction costs as a base of total project.
Well, that's conceptual design, you still, once you get beyond the vote, there's the full-blown
Yes,
design, where you
okay.
got structural, mechanical,
Okay.
electrical,
Yep. Nope, I just
you know,
wanna make
fire
sure that we're-
equipment, specialty stuff. So you still have a lot of design, there's not a lot of design that's pre-bond, other than what you were talking about, site work, things that they want.
Right, yeah. You're right, we need to specify what we want them to do.
Right, so that we're not, again, one of
Comparing
them,
apples
one,
and
yeah, somebody's saying, we're gonna do this for you, the other's saying, well, we're not gonna do that till later, we're gonna do this for you, for pre-bond.
Right. So what's on that list?
I mean, pre-bond, when you think about it, it's basically a conceptual design to present to the voters and a construction cost estimate based on any studies that we've already done or that they think need to be done. I mean, we've got the site work information that's can be given, and that's one of the things normally too, we would give all of the contractors the information.
Same information.
I don't know if they all got it, maybe they all
Nobody
called
got
it.
it. The
Nobody
only people that's gotten that,
would be Bonnet,
I
Page
gave you
and
a
Stone,
copy.
because, well, Bonnet, Page and
Oh.
Stone would have it because they were involved in it, right?
for
No.
that
Way
site.
back.
No,
For
for
this
that
site.
site, because those borings are recent.
Oh, that's recent.
Yeah, the borings.
Well, those are for the tower, you're gonna need new ones for
No,
your
I had them bore over by the fire station as
Oh,
well.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so then it's their engineer
But
that decides.
The
what
conditions
they're
are
doing.
essentially the same, you know.
so we have survey done, we have test borings as far as site work
Were the wetlands, the survey work include wetland delineation
Yes,
and all
yes.
of that? Okay,
Right.
so we can give that to all of the contractors.
goes. Right.
And then,
Yeah, the little pink flag is still up there. Most of them survived. But it's delineated also on
on the
Mylar
on the
and
plan, and
everything.
they would probably also have the wetlands, you know, the specific soil types and all of that when delineated. And they would have done that when? 2 years ago?
the, within
A
2
year
years, maybe less than that.
It's only usable for a certain number of years.
That's for the tower, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think it was 2 years.
Well,
Years.
wasn't it
We
done
did before we came to the
before
town,
COVID?
I don't think.
for the process where they went to the zoning and the planning. A lot of that engineering work was done so that they had that information in the packet that they presented to the town.
And when did they go in front of the town? The last fall?
Yeah, was it last year?
21.
Yeah, I think those borings were done about this time last year. I remember.
The borings were probably done after this committee started, because we talked about it when I first started.
Well,
So they did
we hadn't-
borings,
we didn't
and
start
then they
till
did
September.
additional borings.
So
Right, so it's been twice.
Yeah, because when they did the first borings, they didn't like it so much, and they said, oh, we're gonna do more. And we still didn't like it. But they're still building it. It just makes it more difficult.
The problem that I have in defining what they're proposing on pre-bond vote is we're not really the qualified people to do that. I mean, are we?
We could use the phrase "to include."
Okay.
And then it becomes an added value process. And it's just like any product that you purchase, whether I buy it.
Right, delivery.
I can go to Bank Chevrolet, I can go to Canton Chevrolet, I can go to any Chevy dealer in the country and get the exact same vehicle.
You can't go to Canton, there's nothing.
But what is each dealership adding on to the what services are they giving me as part of that price that they're selling me that vehicle? It's that,
So I mean, we
how do
can
how do
include
I add
presentation
value?
plans, so many meetings, all of them, meetings are what cost money. So are we gonna define how many meetings they attend? I mean, if you're gonna
Well,
make
we
it
should
fair,
define at least the
a minimum of so many meetings.
minimum so many meetings, and if we don't have that many meetings because of whatever circumstances arise, then
So we want it based on the time and materials with a not to exceed price. Sound good? You know,
To get us
see
to-
where I'm going.
to
To get
the
us
bond
to
vote.
the
to get us
bond
the
vote.
bond vote.
And the bond vote would include presentation plans. Is it gonna include a PowerPoint presentation?
Probably, yeah.
Probably, so maybe we do need to make a list. And obviously a construction cost estimate.
Right.
So, you know, I look at like the Tilton Police Station, a successful project, the first time through. They had multiple public hearings where the people could come and talk to the building committee and their project manager at the same time. Get answers to those questions. As the more meetings they had, the building got refined, because they had a number in their head that they wanted to hit. And by the time they got to the last bond hearing, they had a number, and this is what the building is, this is what it looks like. They had plenty of visual aids.
And it was based
for
on
them.
public input?
A lot of it was based on the questions that the public had that we find, so when they had their next meeting, they had the answers, and there was more questions.
But the public input did not affect the construction cost.
No.
It just
They had
allowed them to be
they had
able
a
to
number in their head
explain
to
things.
get, we don't think we're gonna get this unless it costs this number or less.
So they're gonna have to do a preliminary layout. They're gonna have to have a list of equipment that you need to purchase, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot.
Well, no, you don't, because that's Bristol just passed a $4.5 million project for a combination of police and fire. No FF&E.
Right, and I think that's,
That's a huge,
But that's a big number, isn't it?
it is a big number. It's a big number.
So where's
And
the
so I was
FF&E
talking to the
dollars
fire
gonna
chief,
come
I says,
from?
what are you gonna do? They don't even have money for a chair.
Yeah, we can't do that.
but you can, but you'd have to have a separate warrant article for the FF&E.
Well, why would you do that? It's a
What's
smaller,
FF&E?
nothing thing, it's like you
Furniture,
said.
fixtures,
no.
and equipment. I think you can look at it two ways. If you separate out the FF&E, then it lowers the building cost. And,
Why would you bond that stuff?
well, that's the other thing. So the people's perception is, if, and again, we'll just throw some numbers out there. If we're looking at a building cost, construct this building, no FF&E, of $4 million. And then FF&E is $500,000. People see, oh, it's $4 million. Oh, that's the cheapest one yet. Okay, maybe we'll vote for it. But if we make it $4.5 million, or let's say $5 million versus $5.5 million, they're gonna go, yep, there they go, see, they're still spending all that money.
Well, except that.
And like Kevin said, why would you bond chairs and desks? Because they're not gonna last 20 years.
Right.
You don't bond anything that's not
Well,
gonna last.
except like your
life of the
hose
bond.
tower and your decontamination equipment, that was pricey, right?
So we own, fortunately, we've been buying stuff all along. We have decontamination equipment. We have SCBA compressor, a brand new SCBA compressor. So some of that stuff, we don't have to build a communications tower. There's one here.
Right.
So what originally was going to be FF&E for something over either the Manville Road or Tilton School property is going to be less than that now, on some of the bigger stuff, but then there's other stuff that you're still gonna need. You still need a exhaust extraction system, you know, those things, you can't just let that stuff fly in the garage.
There's gonna be things like that, exhaust extraction, that need to be installed as the building is being built. And I don't think you can include that in FF&E.
Right.
That's gotta
The
be part of
the
the,
overhead air wheels and electric reels.
Right, so those kind of things.
Those things are,
yeah.
the
'cause those are
water,
gonna
the
be
water
ins-
supply that fill the tanks when the trucks are sitting there, the overhead plumbing for that stuff.
Right, it's all part of it.
That should be part of the building.
Right,
If you don't want to count filing cabinets and desks, I can see that would be a separate cost because, well, the design that we originally planned, most of the desks were built in as counter space. It wasn't a separate desk. There were like 3 desks. The rest of it was built in counter space. That lasts most of the life of the building.
and that can be part of the design process that we go through, the way the Tilton Police Station was done, with meetings with the building committee and the contractors, and then input from the public.
But they did it in the design process. We're doing it in a design build where after the bond vote is when it gets going on.
Right. So that's where it comes down to, okay, well, do we have the built-in desks that are gonna cost us $10,000? Or at least we need to save 20, so cut out those 2 desks and we'll go to Staples and buy a desk for $600.
Okay, so
Those
you-
are the kind of decisions that are gonna have to be made.
But they'll be made after the fact, and if you didn't carry enough, and the architect needs, and the contractor has to have an estimate to bring to the bond vote, right? So those kind of decisions sort of need to be, are we buying desks separate, or are they built in? I mean, it's probably not a huge cost, but there must be other things like.
Over time, the built-in ones are cheaper. That I found when I did that project. That's why I had them built in, because they're not
Or if,
kicked
or
around,
you
the
put that
drawers
right
don't
in the,
break, and it's
you make those decisions before the vote, with the design team.
And if you do it before, and you find out during the process that you think that it's gonna cost too much, you can make adjustments before that too.
So,
Like, you know, when I had the process, we had no flooring. Everything was just cement, polished cement. No vinyl, no rugs, no nothing, polished cement. It never wears out, never have to replace it, very easy to keep clean, wash, all that stuff.
Yep.
Polished cement.
Well, there goes your Brazilian hardwood in your office.
I know I deserve it, but,
so you gotta reinforce it right so you don't have cracks,
yeah, yes,
Yeah.
it's all,
and build it right.
well, you could go with, vinyl or something. But since you already have to have cement there anyways, I figured, just polish it and call it good.
So we could make if we're gonna have them give us a cost to bring us to the vote, pre-bond, we could make a list of what we expect them to provide.
Yes.
Do we wanna make that list at this meeting or next meeting?
Well, we're gonna do it regardless, so let's assume that my opinion is that we assume that the commissioners are going to allow us to continue, and it's not wasting any time.
Either way, we're gonna need that list.
Right. But we'll provide them with boring results and survey, including wetlands delineation.
Is there any other thing that might have been done there's old
They
building
did
plans.
a study on the building itself, an engineering firm to.
We should provide them that.
Yeah,
On the existing.
on the existing station.
I can go through because I have a lot of old stuff. We should list it and provide it to all. So their deliverable, basically, well, first of all, there'll be X number of meetings, right? And we can plug that number in now. With meetings with the commissioners, meeting with the building commissioner, or just X number of meetings?
Easiest listed as X number of meetings, but we should try and figure out what that number should be, because I know the commissioners are gonna want updates as they go along. You're gonna be meeting with us, and you're gonna have to, they'll also have to have public meetings that,
Right, so
talk about the
basically,
project.
X number of meetings.
Rather than have
X number of public meetings.
these people jockeying between this committee and the commission, it makes sense to have, do them together.
Well, a lot of the meetings that, well, maybe, where you're making decisions about what you want to do, that's not necessarily what the commissioners want to hear. They want to hear what you did and what your recommendation is, not how you, not, you know, titles.
Right.
So, I don't think the commissioners are gonna want to come to all the meetings that we're probably gonna have with people.
What about space needs?
Yeah, I mean,
That's a huge part of this.
that's part of what you
Pre-bond.
do before the bond, you do a space needs assessment, which we have. We have, but it probably needs to be reviewed.
So that we can give them the previous space needs.
Right.
We have it, they basically evaluated both buildings, right? So they need,
They only evaluated the Park Street property because that was the property that was going to be renovated.
so we should give them the previous study.
Center Street
So
property was
we're gonna
not.
be asking for a space needs study, an update.
So the space needs study with the current information from the commissioners, that we from the commissioners, is that one fire station,
Single station.
everything. That is not what we had before.
Correct, so they
We've
need to
always
update.
had two fire stations.
But you gave us a document that had right down the square footage for every room. I can't see
Right, and we'll,
This is
You see, they got,
that. Wait, let Matt,
this
let Matt hold it.
There's eye drops now that you get in your eyes to
yeah,
read
isn't
it.
that great?
Really?
I
Yes.
haven't tried it, though. Kind of scares me.
But this is from the North Conway.
Right, but
Yeah.
we have one of these.
Well, we have some information you gave us, I'm not sure it was the architect's space needs.
The space needs assessment I have in the Excel spreadsheet.
This right here,
Yeah, yes.
Is that for one station or,
this was the Tilden School property,
yeah?
just.
No, we have. Keep going.
You know,
We still
know
need
we have
we still need whoever is selected, their architect, to do a space needs study, and we will provide them all previous studies. How's that?
I mean,
Right, we still need,
space needs based on who's and what.
based on the architect's experience with fire stations. That's why you hired them. Right?
Yes.
And we have the previous studies that we can provide as background information, that they then will update the study for a single station headquarters.
I think the
at
only
Park Street.
major difference between previous studies and this study was in previous studies, we had fire apparatus split up in two locations.
Right.
In this current proposal or mission from the commissioners, everything's in one place, so you have to have enough apparatus space to house that
All
code
of
in one place rather than two separate places. Apparatus bays are easy to tack on.
Right.
Everything else should stay relatively the same.
Well, except you have staff, you had staff in 2 locations before, now you've got staff in 1 location, right? So they need to update, they need to have a standalone space needs study. We'll give them what has been done, they can utilize that information that helps save costs, but we need one that's specific for our project.
Right.
So that's one of the deliverables. Space needs study, X number of meetings. We're gonna want a cost estimate, right? We're gonna want a,
Cost estimate.
how many
or
floor
not.
plans are we gonna ask them to do?
Well, this is where,
Your
when an architect has a floor plan in mind, I have to look at it to see if it's gonna flow for us. Most fire stations have a flow pattern, I gotta make sure it works for us.
Correct.
And this is where probably, when the architect is kind of laying it out, it's be good for him to be checking in with me to see, I put this room here, is that gonna work for you? Or this is what I have, is this gonna work for you guys? Before he's like really,
And the
Let's see.
final sort of floor plan, maybe it's not necessarily necessary for the long run.
it's not.
So we want them to come up with a reasonable floor plan that we can present to them.
Right, 'cause you can
We
have
still
a,
move rooms around.
you can have a 10,000 square foot shell, and you can rearrange it in an infinite number of ways.
Right, but you need something to show people, okay, this is.
Right.
Well, this is why it's this big. We've got this area that does this, this is the office area, these are the bathrooms. You need that.
It may not end up being that
Exact,
exact floor
right.
plan, but, yeah.
So we'll call it a conceptual floor plan. How's that?
Perfect.
And then we're gonna want a PowerPoint presentation of some, but they'll have to take some input from you, some input from themselves. I mean, we've got to present this to the voters, right?
Yes.
One of the things that we need to be careful is not giving them too much information
Right.
and then losing our audience. So we need, like on PowerPoint, it's, okay, here's what the street elevation is going to be. Here's what the elevation facing the DPW is going to look like. Maybe as you're driving, as you're coming south on 132 or Park Street, here's what you're going to see.
So we need to add that to the list. They're going to give us all the building elevation views.
Like for the PowerPoint presentation.
That's what we've had in the others.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then also a basic floor design.
Right.
Floor layout, because people just like, look, this is where the fire truck's gonna sit, and this is, where the kitchen is, and they just like, to look. Not necessarily that that's what it's gonna be, but.
Right,
Right.
here's the lobby where I can walk
Right.
in
So there's some
and conduct
cross
business.
sections basically of the building as well, right?
Yeah. You might need 10 slides.
But the reason I'm saying this is we should be listing this out so that we know that each one of them is gonna cost, that's part of their scope. We want floor plan, we want we want elevations, we want cross sections.
Right.
Maybe we can make the PowerPoint, we can just say to be utilized. Or maybe we don't assign the PowerPoint presentation to the architect or the contractor.
Well, given some of the proposals or the information that we were sent, I think that the contractor would take some impressive product that they gave us.
Yes.
I think they would probably provide a better PowerPoint than I.
Then we would,
than I
yeah,
would
okay,
be able
so
to.
that's where I was going with this.
And you
So
see my PowerPoints, they're not pretty.
No,
we want a PowerPoint.
no, and if we want to sell this thing, we don't want you doing the PowerPoint.
That's right.
So we want a PowerPoint.
And you don't want me doing it either.
By the contract.
Yeah, you broke a computer that won't let you work on it.
That you can't find emails on.
Okay, well, we're getting there, our list is pretty good.
Now, I think we're gonna back into the number of meetings that we're at.
Yes, because if you're having public meetings, it's different than a workshop type meeting. Because I'm assuming that's what, when we have meetings with them, it's a workshop that they say, well, this is what we found that you need this and that. And the chief says, well, I need this here,
Yeah.
that there. And we say, well, we'd like to see this or that. So it's a workshop versus they're still public. All of our meetings should still be public.
Let's,
And we'll have this many people show up at all.
so let's back into it. We need them at the bond hearing,
Right.
so that's 2, right?
Oops, the hearing, yeah,
We need them at the annual meeting, so that's 3.
yeah.
We wanna have at least 1 public information session,
Yep,
so that's 4.
yep.
Do you know the total of meetings they did at Tilton meeting, or 4 Tilton meetings? It seemed like it was.
I think they had 3 public input question meetings, and then the bond and the district
That
meetings.
puts us around, what is it, 7?
We're at 4 right now with 1 public information session.
Right, we've got a public info, we've got the hearing, we've got the annual meeting. Where's the
I think we should have more than 1 public.
Well, is it 1 bond hearing or 2?
One bond.
Public
One
hearing.
bond.
One bond.
Public hearings 2, the annual meetings 3.
3.
Oh, wait, when you say public hearing, oh, for the bond vote,
Right.
Yes.
public hearing for the bond vote, but there's a,
An information session for
right,
the public.
Should probably have more than one of those.
okay, so
Because the first one is gonna be like brand new, and people are gonna see it, they're gonna go to the meeting, they're gonna come home, and then they're gonna start, oh, well, I should have asked this question, I should have asked that question.
And the bond vote's in December, right?
No, the bond vote will be at district meeting, the bond hearing.
That's
will be
bond hearing.
Yeah.
is
January,
January
February.
to February. So at the annual,
So we could do another public information session in that same time frame, in the bond hearing.
We could, but I don't, nothing's going to change at that point.
No, but it would just continue to engage the public. Do you think we can get 2 in before Christmas?
Not, if we don't, if we just continue on as we are, we'll be lucky to get to one Christmas.
other than you can basically put it out there that our workshop meetings are public meetings, please come and participate. But not in the beginning, I think we need to let the contractor get something to be able to, I mean, they can still come, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, it's a public meeting.
Yeah. You
But
don't have,
towards-
well, you don't have to have public comment
Right.
until we have something substantial to comment on.
So were you thinking 3? I still lost count.
Well, we're at 3.
There's only two actually required, the public hearing bond.
And the annual meeting.
And the annual meeting. So then we want X number of public information meetings. If we put 3, we'd be lucky to get 3 in, is what you're saying.
Yes,
So now we're at 5 total public meetings.
and everything else would be workshop.
And then, so we got 5 public meetings, and then we've got, I mean, what, every 2 weeks, I don't know what they need.
So, once you get to a certain point, the architect or the design team is there every time you meet here all together.
I mean, realistically, we're not gonna, it's April, then the April, so May, we might pick somebody by June, I think we had some dates in here, right? That gives them construction phase, June to November realistically to do this one.
How long does it take?
It'll take all of that.
And there may be like
4
a month,
months?
there may be a month where they just wanna work on it and not even talk to us.
Right, and then come back
And
with
they'll
something.
come back with something. And we won't have anything to do because
Right.
the architect and the design team's working on it and they don't have enough to give us.
So,
Because
say
you
August,
gotta remember
September,
that
October, November, say there's 4
They're gonna
months.
shove us into their schedule. That is already probably pretty busy.
Right,
The architect and design team. In
They're all
that,
pretty busy right
yes.
in that June to November timeframe, what is the expectation of us meeting with the architect and design team as they're working on the plans?
Once a month.
now. Once a month, maybe. There's not a
They bring
lot.
us updates.
Right, so it's
Until
gonna be.
you get towards the end, then it might be twice a month, right?
But it's gonna be more after
They get
a successful bond vote in annual meeting, then that's when
the
there'll be-
detailed stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
and there'll be more,
There'll be more detailed stuff and then it'll get to a point where
Right,
it's just a building a process and
right,
there's no need for the building committee anymore.
right.
right. I mean, we may want to look at plans and it's just because it's curiosity.
Curiosity more than anything.
Curiosity kills the
Yeah,
cat.
once it gets to a certain point, it's all automatic.
So,
So we could just
you
budget
could just
once a
say
month.
July, August, September, October, November, so
Five,
meetings with the
Meetings.
building committee.
yep.
And you want 1 or 2 meetings with the commissioners just to give them an update.
Which I think we could probably, we've got, because you've got 3,
So we have one commissioner on the, well, he's not here today, he's on vacation, but we have one commissioner who's a member of the committee who can generally keep the commissioners up to date as where this committee is.
right,
But at some point, I'm sure the commissioners want to have the design team in front of them.
yeah.
So let's budget is 2 meetings enough? 2 meetings with the commissioner?
Because ultimately, they're the ones
You
making.
make
the
sure
decision.
that-
Right, right, because they're not working for us, they're working for the commissioners. So, okay, so we're looking at 5, 5, and 2. 5 public, 5 committee, and 2 commissioner. And deliverables, basically a space needs study, cost estimate, conceptual floor plans, elevations, cross-sections, and a PowerPoint presentation. Anything else we expect? It doesn't mean that we can't, once you've selected somebody, you can't ask them to do more. We're just looking for something as, so that somebody can give us a price so that we can
Right.
compare.
We want to be able to compare apples to apples.
Right. And that's for the pre-bond issue. I think for the post-bond, I believe the percent is the right way to go, to compare costs.
Agreed.
And we should let them know, like in that letter, you know, and what I'm gonna do is I'll alter this letter to kind of
Include
include this. Go to the second page of the letter, I had a schedule, I don't know if we want to go through that. But I also have the contract process that said, following a successful bond vote is the intent of TNFD to amend the design-build contract to allow completion of the project using cost of the work plus the design builder fee with a guaranteed maximum price. And that's the exact terminology in AIA 141, which I assume that's what they want to use. But that was a question that I was going to ask at the interview. What contract form do you usually use for design build projects? Because I know there's EJCDC documents, there's AIA, some contractors might have their own, which I would stay away from.
I think we need to use the standard one, whether it's
Standard one.
AIA or
CDC.
And when the district signs a contract, we have two groups look at it. We give it to Primex, to look at it and make sure we're relieved of any liabilities, and then it goes to our attorney for him to have him work over on it as well.
Right, and that's why using a standard document is better than somebody,
Right.
because you're gonna pay your lawyer a lot to look at somebody's own individual contract.
No,
That
that's,
is a small question.
And then, of course, I read on the letter, I had, the reservation of rights, the typical, we reserve the right to reject all firms, decline, it's like the typical. Which is why
Well,
we
we
have
don't-
that anyway.
Well, the commission.
The committee, I say tilt.
Yeah, we don't think that,
Right.
the commissioners need that, we don't.
But that's sort of why I said I don't think we've done anything wrong right now, because they always have the right, reserve the right to waive any informalities or whatever. So they just need to
and those two uses of the word may.
make it right. And you want to do what's in the best interest of the taxpayers, the way I look at it. And the department.
When
But-
we started this process, and I was trying to find the minutes from when we actually decided that we were just going to do a phone call. We made a list of contractors, and I think there was 10 or 12 on the list. And a lot of them said either never responded, left voicemails and never responded, like multiple voicemails and never responded. And others that just said, we're not interested.
Yeah, I saw that, Mr.
And so
Yeah,
that
we
was
did
just
that. I remember that list.
Yeah, so I mean,
And suggestions, people added
Yeah.
names to the list.
And- this is, the 5 that we've got is, those are the ones that respond.
right. Yeah, and like I said, I went through and I've got my, I did my ratings and everything, so
Yeah.
we'll just wait to hear from
We
the,
could go back, start all over, and then at the same place with the same five.
Right.
exactly, or less,
And that's
or less.
That's a colossal waste of time, I'm sure.
Right, because the other thing, when you go back out, these 5 are gonna say, the hell with you.
Right.
We've already put
Yeah.
all this effort, now we've gotta do it this other way.
No, we've
Oh,
already
we
jumped
do it
through
again?
hoops, thanks,
Right.
but no thanks.
Right.
So, I think Lou was gonna go to that meeting,
What's that?
Lou was going to go to that meeting. Just to be clear with the commissioners that I mean, I am very much a policy and procedure kind of guy. There's no harm in them saying, look, for example, explain to them how it was done, this is where we got, how we got here. There's no harm, no foul, there's no real incentive to throw this away, so
Right, it's not in the best interest of
I don't
anybody,
think it's.
as far as I'm concerned.
No. And if we delay the process another year, it's just going to be another year more expensive.
Well, the economy would keep you, and then we'll have.
Well, maybe it might be cheaper.
We'll have-
Well,
we'll have people
You're
with no work.
gonna have, it's gonna be whatever the climate is next
Yeah.
spring and the spring after. You might not make it this spring, but at least if you got that far to the following one, you might actually make it.
Yeah.
So, I think it's nice to have everything lined up for that meeting.
Um,
So I will try to go on Tuesday if you want.
Yeah, I'll be there, so
Yeah, I don't,
you'll lend credibility.
I will. No, I don't think we should start over.
So, are we done with the letter?
I think so. What I'll do is for the next meeting, I'll have another draft. How's that?
Actually, if you could bring it maybe next week to the commissioners
For the
meeting.
commissioners meeting, sure.
Probably need to send it to them beforehand, say this is what our, or not.
I don't think, well, I don't know. I mean,
You
you're
gotta
gonna have
look
a
at-
discussion and they're gonna decide whatever they're gonna decide.
Yeah.
Right, I'm not sure.
I don't think that
Matt.
that makes any difference whatsoever, personally. but-
Well, we could explain what our process moving forward would be.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so, moving forward, we need to address meeting day, and I guess meeting time as well. Chief will not be available on Wednesdays from now until,
So November, both were May 1st to the end of October.
Does Thursday work for most people?
does not work for me,
What day?
Thursday.
Thursday. Definitely would be my first choice.
What were John's implications?
I don't know. Well, I mean,
He's on the school board, so I think Monday throws him away.
I thought he was getting off the school. I know he was there last week. And they meet on Mondays?
I think they do, don't they?
I have no idea.
You have no idea. When's the school board meet, man?
You're asking the wrong guy. I don't pay attention.
What if there's a test? You
But
gotta
it's
pay
not-
attention in case there's a
It's
test.
not every week, is it?
No, it's not.
And your limitation on Tuesdays is that you're here every Tuesday, right?
Every Tuesday?
Mondays are fine for me. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday's fine. Thursday's out for me.
Monday's fire training for me, so. And it isn't every week, but
Well, we don't meet every week.
Well, no, that's, do Mondays work for you?
I think so.
Tim, would Mondays work for you?
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Chief? So, what about you, Ken?
Yeah, I can pull it.
what
So-
are we doing, the second and fourth right now?
That's what we're doing now, but we would need to find out like when the school board meets, and actually if John is available on Mondays, other than school board nights.
We're probably getting another member of the committee, another
That's
person
good.
applied,
From Northfield?
yes,
Good.
Who is it?
all Thursday.
Oh, he must come back.
Good.
Let's be bored.
He has to bring a different card every meeting.
You can,
When he rides.
they're all pretty cool.
Yeah, they are. Nice and cool.
So when,
So we're considering Mondays.
yeah. And for all Mondays are available, other than John's school board meetings. You can adjust which Mondays we meet. Tuesdays are out.
Can you switch your selectmen's meetings?
Well, actually, I've tried unsuccessfully to get the commissioners to change their meeting so we could go to their meeting, but they won't. But the Northfield Selectmen have met on Tuesdays ever since I can remember. And the commissioners have flopped back and forth. They've met a lot of different days. I think I found the school calendar.
I think I do too. I think their meeting looks like the second Monday.
And we have to think about when the commissioners meet They meet on, is it the first Tuesday of every month?
Usually the first Tuesday, sometimes the second Tuesday.
So we probably wouldn't want to meet on the first Monday, only because if we had to if we needed to give the commissioner something, it wouldn't give us any time.
Looks like our second and third Mondays of the month, but they're not gonna meet at school.
So they meet twice a month? Hard to tell.
In
It's very
consecutive.
John would know.
School board meets once a month.
Well,
But I can email
Regular
John
business
tomorrow
meetings,
and
Wintersville
and
School
ask him
District.
when they meet. You know, just let him know that we're looking at Mondays, and does, you know, does he have a conflict? When does the school work?
So he'll be back for the commissioners' meetings on vacation, he knows away.
Yeah.
And essentially, we're gonna meet every other week until we select a contract, right? After that, they're gonna have to do their work, so we may not
We
meet.
won't meet at all.
Other than the 5 that we're telling you.
So we still got some time left if you guys want to look at the calendar as far as interview.
Yeah, if you look on what I had sent, I just threw these dates based on the past meeting. We know that bond vote is probably March 11th, the earliest. Otherwise, it was gonna get pushed, right, to March.
It's the first Monday after the second Tuesday, is the bond vote in March. It's the same as district meeting.
Right, which is on a,
Hold on, I'll get you
wait a
there.
minute,
So, it'll be the 20th of March.
why did I have the 11th?
The 11th is a Saturday.
We talked about something,
It's
that
town
we thought
meeting.
they might change it.
That's town meeting probably for the,
For Tilton, you know.
town.
Okay. So this will be March 20th would be the bond vote, right?
As long as the commissioners don't change the date of the meeting. I know they talked about putting it to a Saturday, but they probably won't.
Oh, okay, that's probably where it came from. Because I think we said that the town was meeting on the 18th.
Yes, that's right.
And
That's-
so we were going, I was saying the earliest.
The earliest it would be is 11th, that's if the commissioners changed it.
If they change.
Because they're trying to get more people to participate in the district meeting.
So if I leave it at the 11th, we're conservative, we're better off, right?
Yes.
I'm gonna leave it as the 11th. And then we backed into, if it's on the 11th, it has to be,
No more than 15 days before.
right, so I was saying the public hearing would be sometime in February. I left it as in the month of February.
Usually there are public hearings in concert with the warrant articles and the budget hearing, they decided to do it all at once.
Okay. But it would most likely be sometime in February.
Yes.
Okay, so I just left it at no specific date, just February. Community input, I put November, I don't know where I came up with the 11th, it's probably a couple weeks before
Before
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, we were talking about. Because in all reality, once Thanksgiving hits,
Right, and Thanksgiving in 2022 is on the 24th.
everybody's in party mode.
So I don't know why I put the 11th, which is a Friday.
Or panic.
Sleep.
it's Veterans Day.
It is the Veterans Day, so should I put the 9th on a Wednesday?
Yeah, Veterans Day is.
The 11th.
You be careful, because now we're cutting into hunting season.
Can't happen at night.
Legally?
Of course, I'm saying community input when we're budgeting 3 meetings, so I'm just saying sometime before November. I'll just throw that in. This is basically to give the contractor an idea of what we want, we expect them, what kind of schedule we expect them to meet. Right? And then we're saying the pre-construction phase with cost estimate, pre-bond vote is June to November. I have selection and contract negotiation as June 7th, and I think I picked that based on something said at the last meeting. Is that a commissioner meeting?
It's a Tuesday.
Tuesday, yeah.
So basically what they would
That
have
would
to
be
do
the
is.
first Tuesday.
Right, so they would have to basically be, actually, that's when you would want them to be able to sign a contract. Is that doable?
Probably not, because I have to give it to two different organizations to review.
So we could say that's the selection and contract negotiation phase is by June 7th. But there's a period in between that the contract basically gets signed, and that would probably be it,
If,
July, which doesn't leave them much time. But well,
that's what we have.
that's what we have. So basically the contract would be, I'll say July, whatever, what's the next meeting in July for the commissioners?
Um,
12th?
fifth or
First Tuesdays or second?
12th? I think we said it's the 12th because on July 5th, everybody's away on
Away.
vacation. I know I'm away that week.
So we'll say
They can have
contract,
a meeting,
contract signing July 12th. So now the pre-construction phase with the cost estimate is July to November.
So,
It still gives them enough time. We're not asking them to design the station, we're asking them to do the space needs study. And part of what I'm asking is at the interview, tell us, can you meet,
Right.
can you meet that schedule? That's gonna be part of our interview thing. If they say, hey, there's no way we can do that, then at least, it's good for us to know that, right? So that takes care of that. So backing into my thing, at the interview, please be prepared to discuss the following. Your intent to meet the proposed schedule for pre-bond vote services. Your proposed schedule for pre-construction and construction services, if bond vote is successful. I think that's a reasonable thing to ask.
Yep.
And basically, we're saying, please be prepared to discuss it, not have to submit anything. Well, they should submit something. I guess I could ask them. Your proposed design and construction fees based on a percent of construction cost. Period. Right? No, not all the breakdowns. I kind of think that contract process goes before all of this, but I hate to change the form. They'll read the whole thing. They'll get it. So the only thing would be is if we were to be able to interview people, we've pushed off another week because our next meeting we would review. If everything goes well on Tuesday, our next meeting we would be rating the contractors, correct? With a scorecard like we were supposed to do tonight.
that should be a short process,
Yes.
because we've all done the homework and we have, basically, we're just compiling them and coming with that.
Right, and we still have to add in the interview points, so, but I think that
That'll
we need
be
to get
after.
to that point. So if that's the case, our next meeting is May 11th. We would do that at the 11th. Would we have interviews
No,
on,
because we're changing.
It'd be the,
oh, we're not gonna be on the
it may
11th.
be the 9th.
Might be. Okay. We would review and send out the letter on the 9th, right? Well, the letter has to come from the commissioners.
Yep. Because they're the ones
So they.
that, once we have the letter set
They
up,
only meet once a
I'll
month.
bring it back to the office, Kathy will fix it.
And then-
Commissioners will sign it.
Okay, So if we picked an interview date of, it'd be basically the fourth week in May, right?
The 23rd.
The 23rd.
We won't
Nope,
be here,
we're not
John
gonna-
and
John and-
myself
You'll
won't be
be-
here.
You'll be in,
That's when the,
Chicago.
Yep. That doesn't mean you can't meet on the 16th.
That's true,
Or the 30th.
that's true.
Oh, that's Memorial Weekend.
Yeah, we're not gonna come up. Why don't, let's just for now, pick the
the
16th.
16th.
Here,
So we're gonna meet on the 9th and the 16th?
potentially. I'm just trying to back into, would that, does that work with our schedule? If that's the case, we interview, yeah, we still have time. Originally, we had said we'd be interviewing like the first week of June, so we've got, what are we,
So we're going to be interviewing on the 16th.
Perhaps.
perhaps. Because if we have this letter ready to go, by our next meeting, we'll have picked 3 firms. I think we ought to pick 3 out of 5. I don't think we should be interviewing all 5, especially because one of them didn't even have an architect, so. I think we narrow it down to 3 people, we give them a time slot. Sometimes you call it, what's that?
There's a weekend of notice.
That's
Probably
not.
not.
probably not. We might be better off in June doing interviews, because we can have the letter prepared,
Yeah.
but giving them a week's notice is, that isn't fair.
No,
So
it
that would
isn't
be what,
fair.
the 6th of June?
Yeah, 6th or the 13th.
Well, the
So-
commissioners meet on the 7th, right? And we were, oh, okay. Yeah, that doesn't give us time.
Well, we conduct 3 interviews on the 6th.
On June 6th. And then we've got a selection and contract negotiation on June 7th.
See why we couldn't make a decision after the 3rd interview.
We couldn't.
You can make a decision.
That night.
Is that
Right.
It's gonna be obvious, probably.
Okay, so then we have our recommendation to the commissioners by the 7th, which is the following day. Okay.
Is that their meeting day?
Yes. Yes, that's the first Tuesday.
June 6th. Okay. Time slots, 5. I was giving them 20 minutes, 10 minutes of questions, right? That's a half hour, so the first time slot would be 5 o'clock. The next one would be probably 5:45. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And we'll just have to keep it on schedule.
And 6:30.
And then 6:30.
I think you need to have a few minutes in between.
Well, that's why I was saying, that's the 15 minutes. We're gonna have 10 minutes, that only gives us 10 minutes of questions.
Do you think half hour is on
Yes. And if you run over, you've got the 15-minute buffer. Gives them 20 minutes to present their qualifications. Oh, I say and to answer questions. So,
I think, it should be all right.
yeah. So 5:45, 6:30. That gets us out after 7, but so, right?
I don't, my pumpkin doesn't change until 9:30.
It's lighter, longer.
It is,
It is,
right, so
yeah.
we get that extra hour. So maybe it's 10:30.
Hey,
Maybe that's why I couldn't get to sleep last night.
I'm gonna get many
Just looking around the room, to me, we all look big,
Pretty useless.
except for you, I guess.
Huh? You're useless.
Yeah.
I might be useless, but that's when I go to bed.
You probably did more physical work today than all of us. I know you did more than I did.
Would
My
you drive
unlikely
from
time.
Summer
I
Street
had my
up to
whole
Bay
ice
Hill
cream
and
at
back
home.
to Summer Street and lay on the couch?
No, I actually went to Irma's today. Laid on their couch while they fixed it. Mr. Wall, wait, trust me.
All right, well, we still accomplished a lot
We
today.
did.
Well, we're supposed to, aren't
Yeah.
Yes, we were.
So our next meeting is the 9th, Monday night.
we? May 9th,
Tentatively.
most likely. Definite maybe.
That works way better than the 11th.
Any other business we need to attend to? Seeing none, thank you all for being here, and meeting is adjourned.